let's dive into ADHD because that's why you are here. What is ADHD? If you're here, you probably know what it is, but it's a collection of symptoms that the disorder that's characterized by hyperactivity, inattention primarily, or a mixture of both of those. Right now, we don't really have a differentiating factor between ADD, attention deficit disorder, and ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, for the purposes of diagnoses. They are combined into one, and there's different subtypes. There's the hyperactive subtype, there's the inattention subtype, or there's a mix. You can have some of both. ADHD is prevalent in the United States, and that prevalence, or how present it is in the population, keeps growing. One statistic I have read recently is that it's hovering between 6 to about 10%, somewhere in there. I would need to go back and check that, but it's significant enough that it's affecting enough people to make a difference. For me personally, I don't have ADHD, and my kids don't, but I have met so many people who do. Many people whose children have it, who deal with parent-teacher conferences being tense and having a hard time with knowing how to support their kid. They're bright, but maybe they just can't sit still in a classroom setting. So how can we help support the child to be the most successful that we can? I was in a presentation or in a class, a seminar. I continue my education frequently, and a recent seminar I attended about ADHD talked about the idea of a study that they did with chimpanzees in a cage. And they took these chimpanzees, and they noticed that as they kept them in a cage, and as I'm totally not remembering this correctly, but they noticed that the behavior changed of these chimps as they were in cages versus able to roam a little bit more freely. There's a lot more details. If you're interested, I will send you more of that research after. Send me a message, send me an email. And so it's really hard in some ways to see our kids go from the freedom of summertime to a classroom with few, if any, windows, depending on where they are in the school, very little natural light, and in a situation where they're not able to control their activities, their movement. They're supposed to be in a seat, focusing. And for somebody with ADHD, that it can be very difficult. The first thing I want to talk about is the importance of diagnosis and whether diagnosis for ADHD is important. Now, I've seen many patients with ADHD, mostly kids. Parents bring them in, and they want a naturopathic support for ADHD. And one of the questions that I ask is, has the child been diagnosed with ADHD? And does a parent want them diagnosed? Oftentimes the answer is they maybe have and they maybe haven't. And sometimes the parents don't want them to. There's pros and cons to both. In a school setting, I believe that one of the greatest advantages to seeking a diagnosis for ADHD is that the child is able to get additional support from the school with their learning through an individualized education plan, or IEP, and or 504 plan, which is very similar, adapting the learning environment for the needs of the child. So that's the benefit. A secondary benefit is if medication is needed, like Adderall, Ritalin, things like that. that a diagnosis is needed in case it gets to the point that maybe natural things are not cutting it. So that's one pro of getting a diagnosis. In my view, is a diagnosis needed for me to treat symptoms? No. I will happily see a child patient or even a teenager patient or an adult patient with ADHD and provide them with resources and treatments and ideas and things to help them, but without even needing to have a formal diagnosis. I can just treat symptoms, the symptom of hyperactivity, the symptom of inattention. Now, when we get, if somebody wants a diagnosis of ADHD, I believe it's really important to make sure it's done right. Now, when I say that, I don't believe that a simple questionnaire filled out by you, filled out maybe by the teacher or the doctor, is necessarily sufficient. Sometimes that can help point to a diagnosis, but I really want to try to help patients get the best diagnosis possible, and that includes ruling out other things that it could be. ADHD can overlap with autism, can overlap with other learning disabilities, mental health conditions, and we need to make sure to tease out, is it one of these or is it truly ADHD? Now, I'm not a psychologist. In many ways, I could diagnose ADHD as a licensed naturopathic physician, but I really believe that that's best done in a full neuropsychological evaluation, done by a psychologist that includes several hours of testing. Now, I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not super familiar with what that entails, but I believe it needs to be more than just a pediatrician looking at the child and saying, oh, yep, they meet these criteria, they likely have ADHD, and then proceed to prescribe a medication for them. I believe that there's a better way, and that better way, if a diagnosis is desired, is to seek a full neuropsych evaluation. So that's the kind of a setting the stage. I know that's not necessarily super naturopathic, but I think it's important to set a foundation for knowing whether something can be solved by a naturopathic doctor, or whether something really, the symptoms need to be treated by someone with additional support and help. Okay, so we've talked about the basic of diagnosis. For diet, I'm going to talk about some foundations of health, diet being one of them. If we want to build a foundation, we need to make sure, build a building, we need to make sure that building's foundation is solid. And as a naturopathic physician, I think of my foundational pillars of health are nutrition, sleep, movement, stress reduction, social support, and things like that. Those are the main few. Diet being one of them. We are what we eat. Hippocrates said, "Let food be thy medicine." We need to really make sure that what we're eating is the best thing for us, and what we're giving our kids is the best thing for them. There's several ways that we can help optimize our kids' diet so that we can make sure that they're performing as best as they can. Our brains use so much energy as the form of glucose. Our brains are firing, the neurons are working, everything's working. It needs fuel. And if it doesn't have the best fuel or the right fuel at the right time, then things could go haywire. One of the ways that can happen is through blood sugar. We need sugar. It comes through many sources, including the processed sugar. I'm just talking general in carbohydrates, in fruit and vegetables. There's sugars there, carbohydrates, things like that. I have found that minimizing sugar intake, whether in the form of sweets, extra things with added sugar, is helpful, because then we don't have a lot of blood sugar spikes. It's really hard for kids to focus if they have a really carb-heavy breakfast in the morning, whether it's cold cereal, pancakes, waffles with syrup, jam, toast, whatever that might look like. It's really carb-heavy in the morning. Their blood sugar spikes, and then it's not sustained. So then it crashes. And when it crashes, maybe before the time, lunchtime, maybe 10 o'clock or whatever it is, they're starting to get hungry, whether they verbalize that or not, whether they recognize that or not, and they need that fuel for their brain to keep functioning. How can we help balance blood sugar levels? Protein is one of the most amazing things that can help with that, whether it be peanut butter, whether it's an egg, whether it's meat of some kind, beans, legumes. There's a lot of forms of protein out there, and as we eat protein, it helps stabilize our blood sugar better than just having like really simple carbohydrates and letting it crash. One other way that we can do that is by having more complex carbohydrates, whole grains. One of the things that I love to eat for breakfast in the morning is quinoa. I usually cook a big batch of it and then keep it in the fridge, and I mix it up with just like cold cereal. I put some honey on it. I do add some protein powder with fruit, whether it's frozen blueberries or bananas. I add chia seeds, things like that. That's my breakfast. That's my version of Wheaties, my breakfast of champions, because I think I'm a champion, and I hope everyone else thinks they are a champion as well. But that's, for me, a really good breakfast because it fills me up. It's complex carbohydrates. Quinoa has a lot of protein in it, along with fiber and other things as well. There's an idea that I've heard that ADHD is caused by inflammation. Inflammation in our brain, and it's not necessarily inflammation like you see when you cut your finger and it turns purple because bacteria get in there, but just general inflammation that comes through sometimes eating foods that are inflammatory. That dairy is one of the biggest foods that I know of that is inflammatory, along with sugar. Back to sugar again. Along with also foods that we are allergic or sensitive to. When we eat something and we're allergic to it or sensitive to it, our body mounts an immune response to that. It leads to a form of inflammation, and our body is responding. It's not great. So by reducing the amount of inflammatory foods in our diet, we can become better with that. It'll help with functioning, things like that. Also, just thinking about strengthening the gut, there's a lot of research about the gut-brain axis, about how the things that happen in our gut, including our stomach, intestines, large intestine, affect our brain. And by optimizing the quality of food that we're eating, it will help lead to optimal cognitive functioning as well. Lastly, relating to food, I want to touch on one of the biggest things that I have seen affect behavior, and that is food coloring. There is a fair amount of research that has shown that artificial food coloring can affect behavior. Now, some people will discount that and question it. Anecdotally, I've found that to be true as a dad with 2 kids, that when they eat something that has a lot of food coloring in it, oftentimes it also has sugar in it, my kids get a little crazy. And they don't have ADHD, but they're just normal kids, at least from my perspective, and they get a little wired. I believe that food coloring affects our brain. It affects it likely in several ways, and this has been studied. Number one, that it creates a histamine response. Our body is just like when we get stung by a bee or a mosquito, there's that histamine, that itching that happens. Histamine can cause reactions inflammatory reactions, and it's happening in our brain. Food coloring can also lead to nutritional deficiencies, imbalanced trace minerals. We do need some of these minerals that are really in really small amounts, but it can cause imbalances of those, that lead to imbalances of neurotransmitters, things like that, ultimately leading to that neuroinflammation again. So going back to school, it can be hard when other people bring cupcakes for birthdays or candy or for Halloween or other treats for other occasions, and we don't have as much control over what our kids are eating at school. How can we help them with that? I think one of the keys is to help them recognize that how they feel when they eat foods that have artificial food colorings in them. Red number 40, yellow number 5, things like that. The Feingold diet is a diet program focused on the idea of minimizing food colorings in our diet. But ultimately, I think the best success comes from teaching kids about how food helps make them feel. Ultimately, we can't be with them all the time. If they're at school and someone brings cupcakes for their birthday, things like that, we need to help them, teach them so that they can make wise, informed choices as well. I have prepared a whole other presentation that I've given in the community here in Idaho Falls about red number 40 and ADHD. If you are interested in hearing that recorded, if you're interested in me recording that and putting it on YouTube, drop a comment in the chat. Drop a note in the comments and let me know. Because if you're interested, I'll record it. If not, I still might record it, but it might take me a little longer. Okay, so we talked about diet. Let's talk about sleep. I've talked a lot about sleep in the most recent presentation I gave in this Back to School series about anxiety, about how kids need sleep. I spend a lot of time focusing on that. So I invite you to go check that out. It's on my channel. Recording is there. You can go listen to that. One idea I've heard from another naturopathic doctor is that the brains in kids who have ADHD are not fully awake. And I thought that was interesting, and I need to think about that some more. But something that we can do is to help wake their brain up in the morning. Our bodies has a circadian rhythm, this wake-sleep cycle. And as we help with optimizing sleep, we're able to best help kids succeed better. One way that we can do this is by overcoming the effects of melatonin. Melatonin in our brain is turned on when the lights go down. When the lights go up, melatonin goes down and we're able to wake up more. So when kids wake up, send them outside. Wake them up 15 minutes early. Go do some sunrise salutations on the lawn and help them get moving, get outside so they can see the sun and see the light. So we talked about diet, we talked about sleep. The last thing I want to talk about is one supplement that I go to a lot for patients with ADHD, and that's magnesium. Magnesium is involved in so many cellular processes in our body. It helps kind of counterbalance the effect of calcium. Calcium is involved in so many things as well. Magnesium is involved with energy production, so we hear about ATP. It's involved with that. It's involved with overall lots of processes in our cellular machinery in our cells. Interestingly, patients who use stimulant medications for ADHD often have low magnesium. and low magnesium can cause a lot of problems with energy, with cellular production, neuronal health, things like that, including the production of neurotransmitters, including serotonin and dopamine, which are those reward and happy hormones that we get and help our brain function, that are really important for kids with ADHD. There's several forms of magnesium that you can take. One of my favorites is this version. It's called Calm Powder. It's by Natural Vitality. It's a nice fizzy drink that you can mix with water, and it tastes great. This is a raspberry lemon flavor. There's other flavors as well. I really like this for myself when I need to calm down, but it can be great for kids as well. Priority 1, the Kid Calm supplement that we're giving away as part of this YouTube Live, has magnesium in it. And that's one of the primary ingredients of this. It's a chewable tablet as well. There's so many other supplements that help with ADHD. This one has GABA. There's L-theanine. There's another version of L-theanine called GABAtrex that I also like. You can get lots of different supplements from different companies that'll have the same thing. This this Kid Calm, is one great one that has L-theanine, GABA, and magnesium all in one. It's a chewable tablet, peach berry flavored. So if you're interested in trying that, go look in the comments for the giveaway. If you're watching this after the fact, I'm sorry, but I'm not able to do the giveaway for that. But feel free to look into the Kid Calm supplement from Priority 1. Okay, so we have dived into a lot of things about ADHD. There's a whole lot more that we can talk about. I'm interested now to hear, what questions do you have? Whether it's about ADHD, whether it's about going back to school, whether it's about naturopathic medicine generally, it's an open Q&A. So if you have a question, put it in the comments, and I will be happy to answer that and to help increase your knowledge. There's lots of other things that we can talk about, but I really want to keep this short and keep the Q&A section long as needed. So I'm just going to wait around for a minute. Question here: can giving kids supplements like these ever provide them with too much of one of the included minerals? That is a great question. Can you have too much of a good thing? I think the answer is yes. And I think that's really where working with like a naturopathic physician like myself can be really helpful, in that we're making sure that kids don't get too much of one thing. The nice thing is that the collective scientific community has established some recommended daily values for that. They've said for these nutrients, this is about how much is optimal to take. Now, oftentimes I will give supplements maybe in excess of that or lower than that, depending on what the patient needs. But as a rule of thumb, we can just reference the percentage daily value. So for this magnesium here, let's see if I can get it in front of my camera. It says that the magnesium carbonate, 1 scoop of it, or 2 teaspoons, has about 77% of the daily value of magnesium. The magnesium here, depending on how much you take, can be about 15 to 30%. So we can do some simple math and add those up together as far as that goes. But really, I think that's where the magic of having a provider who is familiar with these supplements, who works with them a lot, is able to give some really good advice to help with that as well. Does that answer your question? If not, comment in the chat and let me know. And if anyone else this year that's interested, let me know as well of any questions you have. And I'm happy to answer them. And I'm also happy to, as we wrap up, also remind you of the other two presentations that I gave about back to school topics. One being the one about immune health, A+ immune systems, talking about different ways we can keep our kids healthy because they're going from the summer freedom back into the classroom, and then and how to support those immune systems. And actually, I misspoke that. Earlier I said that the anxiety presentation had the one about information about sleep. It was the immune system. I'm mistaken, but go watch both for lots of great information about back to school health. There's other one I gave about helping students and kids with back to school anxiety. There's going to be lots of causes, and there's a lot that we can do as parents, a lot that we can do to support our kids going back to school as well. If you have found this helpful at all, let me know. I'm curious of whether this is something that is worth doing more of, these YouTube live events. And we can talk about lots of different things. I try to post regularly on my YouTube channel about different topics as well. So as we close up, I don't see any more questions. I think there's that 7-second rule on a Zoom call. If no one comments in 7 seconds, you can close the Zoom call, is what I've heard. At least that was in COVID era. I don't know if that still holds true. But for those who are interested in the contest, Jason, I will be in touch with you because I know how to get a hold of you because you commented, and that's one of the stipulations for this contest. Thank you for joining, and I will be in touch. Thank you all for joining today. Hope this has been helpful. If you found this helpful or know somebody else who wasn't able to make it today, share the link with them so they can watch it later. And I look forward to seeing you next time. And as always, have a great day and be well.